Welcome to Master Theros Uncut, where we discuss the issues others are too timid to discuss. And now, here's James Theros. Hello and welcome to another episode of Master Theros Uncut. I'm your host, James Theros, and today we are going to be talking about a very important subject to martial artists, but it's also just as good for the average person. So I had a couple of people on my last transmission ask if I would discuss the topic of respect as one of my uncut topics. So I'm going to tackle that today. I'm going to do my best to tackle this. It's kind of a tough subject to talk about, honestly. Respect, it's a touchy subject for a lot of people, but I think it's one that we do need to address here. And let's start with talking about the definition of respect. I'm sure many of you watching this have probably got an idea what respect means, but I think if we were to ask 10 different people that were not my students that didn't train here at our school what respect meant, I think we might get probably 5, 6, or 7 different answers to how to define the word respect. So the respect, if you were to read it in the dictionary, it's been a long time since I've looked in the dictionary to read that, but it's basically the golden rule, and it comes from the Bible as well, and it's basically treating others the way that you would want to be treated. So that's really what respect means. Now, if we really thought about that, or really think about that in its full context, treating others the way we would like to be treated. Now, unless there's something mentally off with us, I don't think that any of us enjoy to be belittled or to be made fun of, or to be mocked, or to be scoffed at, or have somebody cut us off in traffic, or any of those kind of things. And so, respect is really about treating the other person the way we would like for them to treat us. And I think a lot of people get the understanding that respect is basically you treat me nice and then I'll treat you nice. And I've been guilty of that myself as well. I am human, so I'm prone to those kind of thoughts myself. But I'll tell you, when I catch myself thinking like that, a lot of times my wife will catch me thinking like that and kind of correct me, and I'm like, oh, you're absolutely right. I do have to watch the energy I give out, because if I give out the wrong kind of energy, then that's really what I can expect in return. And unfortunately, sometimes we do all that we can to be respectful and nice to other people, and sometimes they just don't reciprocate. They just don't see it. They don't realize what's happening in that moment. So it might be that I hold the door open for somebody and they don't even say thank you after that. Or, the courtesy wave that we all expect when we let somebody into traffic. And how do you feel when you let somebody into traffic and they don't give you that little courtesy wave? I mean, it's kind of means everything, doesn't it? That's basically respecting the other person. So, as far as traffic goes, my biggest pet peeve, those of you who know me know that I don't really enjoy driving behind somebody or around people that don't use their turn signals, because that's a big sign of respect. It's also a safety issue, but it's really a sign of respect, because if that person's coming this way and I don't know if they're going to turn left or right, and I'm waiting to turn right, but I have to wait until they pull out into traffic before I can determine where I'm going to go or when I can go, then I get a little upset not having that forewarning. Same thing when somebody pulls into a parking space. If they don't put their turn signal on, how am I to know if they just pulled in, they just pulled out, if they were going to take that spot or whatever? So if we just used our turn signals a little bit more often, because that's what they're for, they're to signal and give the other person the signal of our intentions. I think that's a big problem in our society today. So if you've caught yourself maybe thinking that it doesn't matter because you're already in the turning lane and everybody should kind of understand what you're doing, I encourage you to rethink that a little bit and just think about, first of all, it's legal or illegal. You want to be legal to use your turn signals, but how it's perceived by somebody else. So we might look around, and of course I'm guilty of it as well. We look around, there's not a person in sight, then you don't use a turn signal at that time. I understand to a certain degree, but if there is traffic anywhere in the vicinity, I think it's not only dangerous, but it's actually disrespectful to not use your turn signals. So anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent too much. But respect is earned. You know, we can't just expect others to give us respect because we hold a certain degree. We're a doctor, we're a lawyer, we're you know, the CEO of a company, or we're the MVP of a football team or something like that, and people recognize that, and or we're wearing a uniform. Should we respect those things? Yes, but sometimes the people that wear those things don't get the amount of respect that they could because they don't really give anybody a reason to respect them. So keep in mind, respect is earned, and just because you earned it once doesn't mean that it's you get it the rest of your life. You have to continue to earn it every day. You know, if we could all respect one another more, think about this for a second. This is going to be deep. I know some of you probably never thought like this, but just imagine all the wars, all the arguments, all the fights that we have going around us all the time, and how many of those wars and fights and arguments happen based upon somebody feeling disrespected. I would say a very, very strong portion of those stem from one or both parties feeling like somebody disrespected them. So it's important that we realize how easy it is to be disrespectful to somebody when they're disrespectful to us, but how hard it is to show respect to somebody who maybe is not showing respect to us. And again, that's why it's earned. You know, if I'm rude to somebody and in the face of being rude, they're extra nice to me and they're really showing, you know, kindness, I find it's very hard to continue being rude to that person. So as a good example is probably like if I go to a restaurant and my steak is you know, cooked too far, burned. And I call the server over and I ask them, you know, what if they could replace it. You know, I'm not happy about this steak, and this is the third or fourth time this has happened to me. You know, I expect to have this for free. If I were to get the response, well, sir, you know, that's exactly how you ordered it, and we would be fighting and arguing, and I would probably leave upset and probably never come back or tell a lot of people about that place, not to go there and what happened, and that server would probably be affected for a good long while, maybe even for the rest of the day, because of that interaction. But the best servers are trained to diffuse that situation. So I might be being rude to the waitress, and oh my goodness, server, the steak is not cooked very well, and I expect to get this free. Oh, I'm so sorry, sir. You're absolutely right. The cook didn't cook it. He cooked it too long and burned the steak, and I'll take care of that for you and take that off the bill. See, then how can I continue being rude to that server after they treat me so nice like that? And I think if we just think like that in our daily lives as we're going about what we do, I think that would make our lives a lot more pleasant. Okay, so I'm just going to be going down the list here. I've made several notes here about this topic. You know, who's the first person that you have to respect? Do you have an idea? Can anybody? I'm going to look down at my phone here. Can you tell me who the first person that you have to respect is? Who do you think that person is? Anybody want to comment on that? I'll give you about 10 seconds here. See if we get anybody to comment. And I'm working off this new program, so I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see the comments right away. If somebody can give me a thumbs up or something so I can see if this is working. I probably should have done that when we got started. Anyway, the first person that you should respect, oh, there it is. Mr. York, absolutely right. You must respect yourself. You see, this is a very, very, very important principle here, because if you look at, you know, kids that are misbehaving, and I'm maybe like teenagers or young kids, like around the teenage years, or even young adults that you know, dress with their pants hanging halfway down, and they've got, you know, ripped up jeans and shirts, and they just have, you know, maybe hats are turned to the side, and they've got a kind of scowl on their face. And you know, they're walking around looking for anybody to show them any sign of disrespect. I have to believe that the reason they're doing that is because they don't respect themselves first. What self-respecting person? Tell me, what self-respecting person would get up on purpose and dress that way, showing their underwear? Where is the respect for themselves? First of all, if I respected myself, I don't want to show my underwear to anybody. That's private stuff. Nobody needs to see that. So that's an indication. So that's why when you see that, you usually don't. It's not usually accompanied by a respectful attitude towards other people. And you know, that's basically comes back to how we think about ourselves. So it's vitally important that we learn to respect ourselves. And how do we do that? Well, we think the right way. We activate the right thoughts. We do the right things. Those are the two most important things. Hang out with people that you don't mind bringing over to introduce to your grandparents or to your mother or your father. If you've got friends that you're afraid for them to meet them, then maybe those aren't the people to be hanging out with. And I'll be doing a podcast about this in the future. But think about that for a second. So we have to have our respect for ourselves before we can respect others. So if I respect myself, if I look in the mirror at myself and I say, I like the guy on the other side of there because that guy has integrity, that guy, looks out for other people, that guy, is a giver, then I can have respect for other people in turn because I respect the person in the mirror. A lot of people, maybe that's the reason they don't respect others, is because when they look in the mirror, they don't have a respect for the person they're seeing back in the mirror at them. And so the good news is, though, that we can change. At a moment's notice, we can make a change and become that kind of person. It only takes a moment. Now, respect starts as a feeling. Many people might not think like this, but respect starts as a feeling first, and it becomes an action second. Now, you can display a respectful action towards somebody. So in the martial arts, we would say yes, sir, or we would bow. But if it's not coming from your heart, if it's just coming from your head because that's what you're made to do, then I don't think that that's really demonstrating respect. I think that's just doing what you're supposed to be doing. You're following the rules. So respect really has to begin here. It has to begin as a feeling. You have to feel respect for the other person. And if you feel respect for the other person, then I think that your actions are going to automatically fall into line with your feelings. So the first thing you have to do is to feel. How do you feel about the person you're interacting with? Now, you may not get a great feeling about the person you're interacting with at the moment, and it might be that it's not just, we have to separate respect from our other feelings as well, because I respect my parents, but occasionally I'm not happy with them, right? When they ground me or take something away from me, at that moment I'm not happy with them. I'm upset with them, but I still respect them. So we have to keep that in context there. So if you're dealing with somebody that you don't respect, then you have to do the best that you can. Like I said, it's kind of like the server situation. If I'm dealing with somebody I don't respect, maybe I can set my goal to gain their respect and get to the point where I can find something about that person to respect. We're not all perfect people. I don't know anybody who's absolutely perfect that doesn't have an off day or doesn't have some kind of a vice. Some people like candy. Some people like excess soda pops. Some people, like, rated R and rated X movies, whatever their vices are. I mean, everybody has a vice of some kind. Where it rates on the scale, some people are into drugs and some people are into alcohol. Everybody's got something. We've all got vices that we struggle with, and sweets for me is one of those vices. I love Reese's cups, and if I had my way and I could get away with it, I would eat Reese's cups for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But unfortunately, those aren't very healthy for me. And as a martial arts instructor, I have to maintain my discipline. So anyway, that's an example. So if I have that vice and somebody else's vice is a little bit different than mine, I have to recognize, maybe his vice is different, but I have them too. And so I shouldn't not respect that person because of a vice or two that they have. I have to try to understand them a little bit better. Maybe their upbringing was different than mine, and maybe they didn't have some of the things that I had, and so maybe I can learn to start respecting that particular part of that person first. And then as I get to know them, hopefully I can form more respect for that person. But if I get to know them and then they prove themselves as not worthy of my respect, then I just stop associating with them. I stop hanging out with them. I stop going to places where they're at. So respect really it starts as a feeling first. So in my school, when we do a bow toward the flags, we have to think about first of all, what does that represent? When we bow towards our flags, that's a sign of respect towards our countries. We bow toward the American flag because we live in a free country, and we have the Chinese flag and Korean flag, which is where the martial arts came from. The Kung Fu, the birthplace of the martial arts is China, and whether we like what China's doing or not doesn't matter. That we're paying homage to the fact that they brought this beautiful art to us. And then our Korean flag, which is one of the countries where one of the arts that we teach, or two of the arts that we teach in our school, come from. So it's the feeling of thankfulness that we have towards our arts and our freedom. That's when we bow to the flags. That's what it should represent. It shouldn't be just bow to the flags because somebody told us to do that. So I know there's certain situations with I think it's Colin Kaepernick or something like that. I'm not really a big sports guy, so I didn't know who this guy was up until probably 2 weeks ago or so when they first aired the situation where he's didn't kneel for the or he kneeled instead of standing for the national anthem. And I know this is a kind of a touchy subject for people, but I'd like to think about it like this: if he truly doesn't feel that respect towards our flag, I don't want to have to force him to stand up and salute the flag or sing the national anthem or what have you. He has to feel that. So that's his freedom. That's I don't agree with that, but I don't fault him if he doesn't feel it. You know what I mean? So I don't want to force. I don't think anybody should be forced to do things like that if they don't feel it. So if he doesn't feel it, now that's a whole different issue as to why he doesn't feel it. But if he doesn't feel it, I understand why he wouldn't want to celebrate it. So again, as I said, I have no dog in this race. I'm not a fan of his. I don't know who he is. I've just seen his pictures, and that's about as far as it goes. But I understand his thought process. That's what we do. Live in a free country where we're free to speak out about things we don't like, and we're free to speak about things that we do like. And that's the whole idea, is we're supposed to be able to talk about these things and have others respect our feelings and thoughts on it. And sometimes I don't think that we all get that opportunity. And so that's just a kind of an example that's happening in our world today in the media. But we deal with it the same way, or we all deal with that in a similar way in our everyday lives. And sometimes we've got to think about that. Why is a person not respecting us? Maybe they don't feel the need to respect us because we haven't given them any reason to feel the need. Now, that's we're going to kind of shift into some parenting things here, given that thought process there. Because in order to get your kids to respect you as a parent, it's important to set boundaries and to stick to them. And let's talk about that for a second. So if you're a parent and you set a boundary and you tell your child, if you do X, Y is going to happen. And then they test those boundaries, because kids will test the boundaries. They do X, and then instead of doing Y being grounding, spanking, taking something away, losing a privilege, whatever. That's what Y is. X could be not getting their homework done, bringing home poor grades, getting in trouble at school, getting into a fight with a neighbor. It could be anything. The X and the Y factors. So let's say you tell your child that if X happens, Y is going to be the result. And then they do X because they're going to test your boundaries. And then instead of doing what you said you were going to do at Y, you say, you know what, I'm going to give you one more chance. That just stretched the boundaries. So that means that your child is more likely to lose respect for your parenting because you're giving them boundaries. You're not giving them boundaries, you're giving them chances. And then one chance becomes a second chance and a third chance and a fourth chance. And they'll eventually figure out which chance is where's the real one. So, that's the same thing bullies do it with people at school, and they'll push somebody and they say, you just push him 3 or 4 times, he won't do anything. But if you push him that 5th time, that's when he's going to get mad and say, stop it or something. And we kind of look for those things. So as human beings, and kids are a lot smarter than we sometimes give them credit for. They're testing those boundaries. They're little scientists. And so if we set the boundary and then we move the boundary back, well, they're losing respect for us as a parent. And that's a lot of times why parents have difficulty getting their kids to respect them. Now, I'm not saying that maybe... well, never mind. I won't even say that. Just when you set boundaries, stick to your boundaries. So if you tell them if they bring home a bad report card and it's got D's and F's on it, they're grounded for a week, make sure they're grounded for a week. Don't let them come to you like I used to do with my mother and beg them for 3 days straight until you relent and you give in because you're in a good mood. Because now, the next time that something happens, they're going to remember that and they're going to do it again. And that's when you and I as parents go, my goodness, why don't my kids respect me? I've given them everything, and we don't stop to think about the fact that the kids respect boundaries. There's a lot of things going on in our world right now that could really we could change it if we just taught other people to respect certain boundaries. And going back to the pants hanging down halfway, thankfully there are a few businesses you're starting to see that if they're putting signs out forbidding that, and then signs up in the city saying that that's illegal now. And that's fantastic, because it's a symbol of respect. Is it their freedom to do that? Absolutely, it's their freedom to do that. But I think that needs to be their freedom behind closed doors. I don't think anybody in the world wants to see somebody's underwear, with their pants hanging down halfway down, and they're about to trip on their pants because they can't walk straight. I don't think anybody wants or needs to see that. And so if we would just, as a society, stand up and say, no more, that's not going to be allowed here, they would start to get the message and start cleaning up. If I wanted to go into a store and I'm not allowed to go into that store, but I really want to go into that store, and that's the way I'm dressed and that's the dress code, then either I change my dress code and pull my pants up so I can go into that store, or I don't go into that store. So it's we've got to teach people how to respect themselves more and respect other people, and that starts with each one of us. I have to do it. You have to do it. Our kids have to do it. And that's where we can really start impacting our world, I think, is by starting with the man in the mirror, as Michael Jackson said. So parents, if you really want to get your kids to respect you a lot more, not a little bit more, a lot more, set those boundaries and stick to those boundaries. And of course, when you have to dole out the discipline, explain to them that you already had this discussion and this is the reality of it. I mean, it's supposed to be that if you get caught stealing, you get arrested and you go to jail. Now, there are probably times where people bend those rules and they don't enforce them, and the same thing with a traffic ticket. You know, I had a good friend of mine that used to speed all the time, and I had some kind of magic, like silver tongue or something, and he would never get a ticket. He'd always get a warning and get out of the ticket somehow. And that's the reason why he kept speeding. He didn't respect the police officers, and he just kept doing it and knowing that he could talk his way out of it. And, you know, I think I got a warning one time in my entire life for any kind of speeding ticket. I've had several, you know, when I was growing up. Thankfully, knock on wood, I haven't had a speeding ticket in a very long time, and I hope to keep it that way. But when I was younger, I got a few. And I could never talk my way out of it. It didn't matter what I had to say. So guess what? The last time I got a speeding ticket, that was kind of the last straw for me. I was like, you know, I'm going to respect the speed limits, and I'm not going to be doing this. You know, now that I do that, unfortunately, what I have is a lot of people behind me, you know, upset because I'm not driving faster. And I can be in the slow lane, not in the fast lane. Even in the slow lane, they're behind me trying to inch me forward. And I'm realizing, you know, I don't want any more tickets, so I need to start obeying and respecting these speed limits. And that's what I've been doing. You can verify that with my wife. It's a totally different thing now, but I respect their laws more because they enforced those laws. It wasn't just, it's not, you know, 65 miles per hour is not a suggestion. It's an actual law, and if you break the law, especially by a certain margin, they're going to stop you and pull you over, and they have a right to give you a ticket because you were breaking the law. Well, that's, as parents, that's what we've got to do with our kids, is to set the laws. I mean, the speed laws, they're kind of posted every so often, and I think as parents that we need to post those every so often by basically, you know, not posting signs in your house, although that wouldn't be a bad idea, wouldn't be a terrible idea. Maybe sitting the kids down once a year and saying, you know, before school starts, here are going to be the ground rules this year, and if X, Y, or Z happens, here are the repercussions, and you maybe even have them sign off on there that they understand that, so that they're not mad at you when you have to be the police officer and enforce those laws with them. So as far as parenting, I think that's one of the very biggest things that you can do, and you have to remember, moms and dads, you can be friends with your kids, but you can't be friends with your kids, right? You can't just worry about how much they like you. Kids will like you and they will not like you based upon your decisions. As a parent, sometimes you're going to have to do things that you don't like, and you're going to have to force the kids to do things they don't like, such as brushing their teeth. That's a big one. Or going to school, or studying, or whatever, coming into the house when it gets dark, or whatever the rules are. Sometimes those are not fun to enforce, but you know you have to do it anyway if you're going to be a good parent and really bring your child up properly. Kids, whether they like that or not, they're going to respect you more because they realize that there are some rules. If there are rules and boundaries, we tend to behave better. I think that's just, think about if there were no stoplights and we didn't have any traffic rules, what would traffic be like out there? How much respect would there be on the road? I mean, our traffic system's not perfect, but you know what? Without those lights and those lines on the road and those signs to guide us, it would be pure chaos out there, I assure you. So I used to have a bucket list desire to want to drive on the Autobahn in Germany. It was one of my bucket lists, but I've since changed that because I've had plenty of time on 465 and the 605 out in California and out in across the Brooklyn Bridge and things like this in New York, and I've driven in some very fast-paced areas in Washington, D.C. I no longer have a desire to drive on the Autobahn. You know, maybe when I was 20-something years old, but not anymore. I could not imagine being in that kind of an environment where there's no speed limit. So let's go on to our next point here. So after setting the boundaries, it's important to never allow your child to be disrespectful. Don't allow disrespectful behavior from your kids. The consequences for disrespectful behavior, again, should be predetermined. I see so many parents that allow their kids to speak back to them and sass back to them and roll their eyes and things, and they don't ever do anything about it. They basically talk back to the child as if the child was on their level, like they were brothers and sisters versus the adult and the parent. I see that so often, and that's why the kids don't respect the parents a lot of times, because the parents are too much like the kids. They want to behave, on their level. They want to bring the child up to that level, and the child is not ready to be brought to that level. The child has to be nurtured to that level, and they have to be taught when to respect and when it's okay to goof around a little bit. So I think I'm having a little problem with my camera here. So I'm going to try to see if I can move this closer here. Anyway, so that's basically what it comes down to, is don't allow your kids to be disrespectful to you. If they're disrespectful to you, you've got to nip that in the bud right away. As soon as it goes to a second or third time, it's very hard to really reinforce it and change it from that point. So it's better to just start out and keep it going in that direction. Next one. Encourage others to assist you with reinforcing respect. That might be your spouse. If you are married, if your child is disrespectful to the mother, the father should immediately speak up for the mother and tell that child that that's not acceptable and you're not going to be dealing with that, and vice versa. Even in a family, if you have a sibling and the sibling is the older sibling is doing their very best to help the younger sibling, and the younger sibling loses their patience and says something mean to the bigger sibling, the parent, again, I think, should step in and correct the behavior to the younger sibling, that's not acceptable between the big brother and the little brother. The little brother should be thanking the big brother for trying to help and not, belittling him or disrespecting him. And I think, again, we have to encourage others to help us with that upbringing of our kids. And as the old saying goes, it takes a village to raise a child, and that's so true. But we as parents, we have to make that okay to do, and we have to let I tell my friends, if my kids are doing something wrong, feel free to correct them. You don't have. I'm not going to climb down your throat because you corrected my child for misbehaving. I want you to correct that. When if I see the neighborhood kids out vandalizing and things, and even if it's not my property, I think it's my responsibility to teach them that that's wrong and to scold them for it. I think if I'm just saying, hey, you kids probably should stop that, what do you think the response might be back to me? It's probably not going to be anything respectful. So I think as a society, we've kind of gotten away from that, and we're not our neighbor's keeper or our brother's keeper anymore, and I think we probably should be a little bit more of that and give permission. Now, obviously, there are always examples that places and people that we don't want to do that with, but our teachers should have that authority, and our spouses and our siblings should have that authority, and our neighbors should have that authority. We should be able to watch out for each other's kids and watch out for others' back, and we can only do that if we give the authority to do that. So if you happen to be out in public and you're having a difficult time with your child and somebody next to you corrects your child on your behalf, you should be thanking that parent for doing that and not scolding them or looking at them sideways, because they're really doing you a huge favor. All my wife has to do is give a look to some unruly child in a place, and I'll tell you what, that child does not know how to handle that, because they're not getting that from the parent. And my wife, she'll just do one of these, and the child kind of gets the message, and you can see them kind of questioning, oh, wow, I don't know how to deal with this. I'm not sure how I should respond. So they just stop doing what they're doing, and because they're just kind of like takes them by surprise. And that's because that particular parent doesn't understand setting boundaries. And if we did more of that, allowing others into that circle of influence a little bit, I think we'd have a lot less problem with kids disrespecting neighbors and elders and things like that. So encourage your kids to encourage others to assist you with reinforcing respect. That's people like your teachers, coaches, and your neighbors. One of our jobs here at our martial arts school is we like to teach the kids the importance of respecting and obeying their parents and their elders. Someday, we teach the kids they may be 10, 11, 12, or 14 years old or 16 years old, but someday they're going to be 36 or 46 or 56. They're going to be a parent or a grandparent or a godparent or something. And at that point, they're going to become the elders. And they're going to start going, oh my goodness, I can't believe all the stuff that I did toward my elders and towards my parents. And how the heck did I get away with it? You know, that's the time where the realization finally sinks in, but it's a bit late. So we have to teach them as early as possible that you respect people who have come before you. You know, there are people that have lived hundreds and thousands of years ago that we have to respect. That's respecting our ancestors and respecting our heritage, because they have been through all the things that we're going through in our lives right now. You know, one of my favorite ways to open a conversation up with one of my students who's being disrespectful to their parents is to ask them, you know, Joey, do you have any kids of your own? And of course they answer with no. And then I say, who's that sitting next to you, Joey? Well, that's my mom. Do you realize that she carried you inside of her belly for about 9 months and pushed you out of her body? Joey, would you like to have to do that for somebody else? And you can see the child start thinking, and his wheels are turning, and he's going, oh my goodness, I never looked at it like that. Joey, do you realize that after mom pushed you out, she cared for you and she nurtured you, and anytime you were upset about something or scared or anything, she was there for you and held you and rocked you to sleep and fed you and cleaned your diapers. I mean, Joey, would you want to have to clean somebody's diapers? Your mother did that for you. And that's the one thing you can never forget, Joey. So when you're talking to your mother, no matter whether you like her rules or not, or what she says or not, bite your lip and realize that she's the mother and you're the child and you came from her. You will never be greater than your mother. You might get bigger than her and you might get stronger than her, but you'll never be greater than your mother because she came first. And I think that's what we need to teach. We need to teach our society again, that respecting our elders is something that we all have to do and all should do. And as a society, we're not going to accept anything less than that. Because someday I'm not going to be 47 years old or 48 years old. Someday I'm going to be 88 years old, and I'm going to need that kind of help from the next generation. I'm going to need that help from my kids. And if I didn't teach them those things early on, then that's kind of making my bed, and I have to lie in it when I get older. So I think as a society, we need to really batten down the hatches a little bit and reevaluate some of our priorities and what we think is important, because there's really nothing more important than passing on good information and good morals and values to the next generation. I mean, if we don't, who's going to? You know, who's going to do that? Is that going to be YouTube? Is YouTube going to do that for us? Is Facebook going to do that for us? Absolutely not. We know that. So it's up to each one of us to take care of our household and then to watch out for our neighbors' households as well. If you're a teacher, watching out for your students. You know, I'm not abusive to my students by any means, but I'm there to help correct behavior when I see it. If I see a child disrespectful to his parent on the way out, I will stop that child and the parent, and I will talk to that child for 5 minutes and say, Joey, did I just hear you tell your mother no? That's unacceptable. And I take him over to what we call the 10 Articles of Mental Training, and I show him, be respectful to your elders, be obedient to your parents. And I say, now, Joey, you're a martial arts student. You have to do these things here, and then you have to do them at home, or I can't keep you as a student. And I'm telling you, so often the parent thanks me for that, because that's what's missing in their life, is having somebody stand up for them when they know they're doing the right thing by telling their child it's time to go, and their child doesn't want to go and they have to raise their voice. You know, I think that's within their rights to do so. And then if nobody else pays attention to it, the child realizes nobody's paying attention, they just keep doing it. But when they come into our school and we stop that, nip it in the bud, and then reframe their thinking a little bit as to why that's important, why Joey should be thinking like that, which is basically he came from his mother. You know, mom is number one. He's second in line, or third in line in this case probably. Someday he will ascend to that first in line. When mom and dad are no longer there and he takes that position, he'll understand a lot more why there are rules, and he'll be glad that there were these rules, because now he'll know how to teach his kids. So that's pretty much what I've got for you today. Now, I've got a call to action here. I did mention when I promoted this video that I have, I don't know if I have it in my room here. I think it's in Mrs. Theros' room. But I have a parenting book that I wrote. I think I wrote it back in about 2008 or 2009, and it's called Successful Parenting, Restoring Lost Values in a Modern World. And inside this book, I tell my story of my childhood and some of the things that I did, and some of the things that were said to me, and some of the parenting skills that were really good, and some that were maybe a little less desirable. And I go through this entire story and kind of give the background as to where this happened and how we turned the corner and why we're in the pickle that we're in. And then, of course, I give several. Each chapter basically tells a little bit of something that you can use to improve some things around the home and restore some of these old values. So I'm going to give away 5 of these books, and the 5 of these books I'm going to give away to, I want you to, now you have a couple of ways of getting them. Number 1 is I can send you this by regular mail, or number 2 is you can stop in and pick it up from me here at the school. If you happen to be a student of mine. If not, you can certainly just leave, you can call the school here, or in the comments you could leave your name, and then I'll get in contact with you through private message and get your address, and I'll mail it to you that way. But I'm going to take the first 5 people who like this video and share this video and comment below with hashtag respect is important. So I only want you to do that if you really thought that today's message was powerful and you got something out of it. And that's how we're going to do that with 5 books. Now, I'm going to take a few moments. If anybody has any questions, I'll wait for a minute or 2 here. If you have anything you'd like to discuss, maybe you have a situation going on and you'd like to maybe get my take on what to do about that, I'll wait for a moment here. Otherwise, if you enjoyed the video, maybe a couple of thumbs up here and there. Let me know you're out there. I do see we have a few people on right now. But if you'd like to be one of the first 5, it's just going to be the first 5 that like and share the video and comment below with hashtag respect is important. You'll get a copy of my book free of charge. It is available on Amazon. If you look up James Theros and Successful Parenting, you should find it, and you can order a copy there. So it looks like there are no questions, so let's see. We got one there from Mrs. McCain. Okay, I'll make sure I have one of those books left up front for Miss Ashley for you this evening. And if we have no other questions, feel free to let me know if you have certain topics you'd like for me to discuss in the future. This was a topic that we discussed today, which was asked for by several people, so that's why I did this one today. And if you have something else you'd like to talk about, and some kind of an issue or subject you'd like to discuss, let me know what that is, and if I've got enough interest, I'll be happy to talk on it next week or in one of the future upcoming episodes. So that's all for today. Enjoy your afternoon, and we'll see you soon.